Let me begin with something very simple, yet very powerful: know your worth. Because the truth is, most people are not disrespected by others first, they are disrespected by themselves, silently, slowly, over time. And when you don't recognize your own value, the world starts treating you like you have none. Think about it. If you walk into a room believing you are not good enough, you don't need anyone to insult you. Your mind is already doing that job. And then when someone actually disrespects you, it doesn't feel surprising, it feels familiar. That's the danger. You see, toxic people have a very sharp instinct. They can sense insecurity, they can sense self-doubt, and they will push you exactly where you are already weak. Not because you deserve it, but because you haven't yet decided your own worth. Imagine a shopkeeper who doesn't put a price tag on a diamond. What will happen? People will come, bargain, undervalue it, question it, maybe even ignore it. Not because the diamond has no value, but because its value was never clearly defined. In the same way, if you don't define your worth, people will guess it. And most of the time, they will guess it lower than it actually is. So what does it mean to truly know your worth? It means understanding that your value does not decrease based on someone's inability to see it. It means realizing that just because someone ignores you, criticizes you, or tries to put you down, it doesn't change who you are. A mirror covered in dust does not stop being a mirror. It just needs to be cleaned. And many of us, we are walking around covered in layers of other people's opinions. Someone once said you're not good enough, you kept it. Someone once rejected you, you believed it. Someone once compared you, and you accepted it. But tell me, who gave them the authority to decide your worth? Nobody. Your worth is not based on how loudly someone praises you or how harshly someone criticizes you. Your worth is based on who you are when nobody is watching, your values, your intentions, your character, your growth. That is your real identity. And when you start understanding this, something very powerful happens. You stop chasing validation. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop shrinking just to make others comfortable. Because you finally realize, I don't need everyone to like me. I just need to not lose myself. Toxic people often use words as weapons. They may say things that make you feel small, confused, or even guilty. But if you are clear about your worth, their words will lose power. It's like throwing a stone at a mountain. The mountain doesn't react because it knows its strength. When you know your worth, you don't feel the need to prove it in every conversation. You don't argue unnecessarily. You don't beg for respect. You simply carry yourself in a way that silently says, I know who I am. And that confidence is not arrogance. There is a difference. Arrogance says, I am better than you. Self-worth says, I don't need to be better than anyone. I just know my value. One compares. The other understands. And people can feel this energy. When you respect yourself, even toxic people think twice before crossing a line. And even if they do, it doesn't shake you the same way anymore. Because now, their words are not defining you, they're only revealing them. So how do you start building this self-worth? Start by becoming aware of how you talk to yourself. Because the longest conversation you will ever have is the one inside your own mind. If that voice is constantly negative, doubtful, and harsh, no amount of external respect will ever feel enough. Replace that voice with truth. Not fake positivity, but real truth. Remind yourself of your strengths. Acknowledge your progress. Forgive your past mistakes. And most importantly, stop measuring your life based on someone else's standards. You are not behind. You are not less. You are not enough. You are simply on your own journey. And when you truly accept that, when you truly understand your worth, something beautiful happens. You stop allowing toxic people to control your emotions. You stop giving them the power to decide how you feel about yourself. You stop shrinking and you start standing. Because at the end of the day, the way others treat you is important, but the way you see yourself is everything. Let me tell you something that might feel uncomfortable at first, but it is deeply freeing once you understand it. Stop seeking approval. Because the moment you start depending on others to feel good about yourself, you give them control over your happiness. Think about it. How many times have you done something not because you wanted to, but because you wanted someone else to approve? How many times have you changed your words, your behavior, even your personality, just to fit into someone else's expectations? And the painful part is, even after doing all that, you still don't feel enough. Why? Because approval from others is like a moving target. Today they like you, tomorrow they don't. Today they praise you, tomorrow they criticize you. If your self-worth is tied to their opinion, your peace will always be unstable. Especially when you are dealing with toxic people. Toxic people don't give consistent approval. They give it in small doses, just enough to keep you hooked. One day they appreciate you, the next day they ignore you. One moment they make you feel special, the next moment they make you feel worthless. And slowly, without realizing, you start chasing that approval. You start thinking, maybe if I try harder, maybe if I change a little more, maybe then they will finally accept me. But let me ask you something. If you have to lose yourself to be accepted, is that acceptance really worth it? Because real respect, real connection, does not require you to shrink. It does not require you to pretend. It does not require you to constantly prove your worth. The need for approval often comes from a deeper place, a fear of rejection. We think, if people don't approve of me, maybe I will be left out. Maybe I will be judged. Maybe I will be alone. But in trying to avoid rejection from others, we end up rejecting ourselves. And that is a much bigger loss. You see, when you constantly seek approval, you stop living your life and you start performing it. Every decision becomes a question of, what will people think? Instead of, what do I truly feel is right? You want to speak, but you stay silent. You want to say no, but you say yes. You want to walk away, but you stay. Not because it's right, but because you are afraid of losing approval. And toxic people can sense this. They know that your biggest weakness is your need to be liked. And they will use it. They will manipulate your kindness. They will take advantage of your silence. They will push your boundaries because they know you won't resist. Why? Because you are afraid that if you do, they might not approve of you anymore. But here is the truth. Not everyone is meant to approve of you. And that is okay. You are not here to be liked by everyone. You are here to be true to yourself, because the moment you try to please everyone, you start losing the one person you cannot afford to lose, yourself. Think about a compass. It always points in one direction, no matter how many people disagree with it. It doesn't change its direction to gain approval. It stays true to its purpose. In the same way, when you stop seeking approval, you become grounded. Your decisions come from clarity, not fear. Your actions come from values, not validation. And yes, at first, it will feel uncomfortable. People might question you. They might not like your boundaries. They might even call you changed. But understand this, you didn't change, you just stopped pretending. And that makes some people uncomfortable, especially those who benefited from your need to please them. But slowly, something beautiful starts to happen. You begin to feel lighter. You stop overthinking every small thing. You stop replaying conversations in your mind. You stop needing constant reassurance. Because now your sense of worth is coming from within, not from outside. And here's something important to remember. You don't need to be rude or aggressive to stop seeking approval. You can still be kind. You can still be respectful. But your kindness should not come at the cost of your self-respect. There is a difference between being a good person and being a people pleaser. A good person helps others, but also respects themselves. A people pleaser helps others, even when it hurts them. So ask yourself, which one are you becoming? Start small. The next time you feel the urge to seek approval, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this because it's right or because I want to be liked? That one question can change everything. And with time, you will realize something very powerful. The more you stop chasing approval, the more genuine respect you start attracting. Because people don't truly respect someone who is always trying to please them. They respect someone who knows their value, someone who can stand firm, someone who doesn't bend under pressure just to be accepted. So don't live your life like a performance, constantly waiting for applause. Live your life like a truth, even if it means not everyone claps. Because at the end of the day, approval from others may feel good for a moment, but self-approval gives you peace for a lifetime. Let me share something very powerful with you, something that can completely change the way toxic people affect your life. Control your reaction. Because the truth is, you cannot control what people say, what they do, or how they behave. But you can always control one thing, how you respond. And that is your real power. You see, most people think strength is about winning arguments, proving others wrong, or reacting instantly. But real strength is something much deeper. It is the ability to stay calm when everything around you is trying to disturb your peace. Think about it. When someone says something hurtful, what happens immediately? Your emotions rise. Anger, frustration, disappointment, it all comes rushing in. And in that moment, you feel like reacting, defending yourself, saying something back. But here's the problem. When you react without control, you are no longer in charge. Your emotions are. And toxic people, they know this very well. They don't always want to win the argument. They want to control your reaction. Because the moment they can make you angry, upset, or defensive, they have already won. Not because they are right, but because they have disturbed your inner peace. Imagine someone holding a remote control. Every time they press a button, you get angry. Another button, you feel sad. Another button, you feel insecure. Now tell me who is in control? They are. And that is exactly what happens when you don't control your reactions. You hand over your emotional control to someone else. And slowly, they start dictating how you feel. But when you learn to pause, when you learn to observe before reacting, everything changes. Because not every comment deserves a reply. Not every insult deserves your attention. Not every situation deserves your energy. Sometimes the strongest response is no response. And this is not weakness, this is maturity. Let me give you a simple example. If someone throws a stone into a calm lake, the water reacts instantly, ripples are created, the surface is disturbed. But if that same stone is thrown into the ocean, it barely makes a difference. Why? Because of depth. When your mind is shallow, every small thing disturbs you. But when you develop emotional depth, small things lose their power over you. Controlling your reaction doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. It means understanding them, managing them, and choosing how to express them wisely. It means creating a gap, a small pause, between what happens and how you respond. In that pause lies your power, because in that moment, you get to decide, do I want to react emotionally or respond intelligently? And there is a big difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is immediate, impulsive, and often driven by ego. Response is thoughtful, calm, and guided by awareness. When you react, you often say things you regret, you damage relationships, you create unnecessary conflict. And later, when your emotions settle, you realize it wasn't worth it. But when you respond, you stay in control. You protect your peace. You handle the situation with clarity instead of chaos. Toxic people often thrive on reactions. They provoke, they criticize, they push your buttons, waiting for you to explode. Because your reaction gives them attention, validation, and sometimes even satisfaction. But when you don't react the way they expect, it confuses them. When you stay calm instead of getting angry, when you stay silent instead of arguing, when you smile instead of getting offended, you take away their power. And that is when the dynamic changes. But let's be honest, this is not easy. It takes practice. It takes awareness. It takes patience with yourself. Because you are not just changing your behavior, you are retraining your mind. Start by noticing your triggers. What kind of words or actions affect you the most? Is it criticism? Is it disrespect? Is it being ignored? Once you become aware of your triggers, you can prepare yourself. The next time it happens, pause, take a deep breath, give yourself a few seconds, remind yourself, I am in control of how I respond. And then choose your response consciously. Sometimes the best response is silence. Sometimes it is walking away. Sometimes it is calmly expressing your boundary. But whatever you choose, make sure it comes from strength, not from impulse. And remember this, controlling your reaction is not about letting others walk over you. It is about choosing when and how to stand up for yourself without losing your inner balance. Because anyone can react in anger, that is easy. But staying calm in a difficult moment, that requires real strength. And over time, as you practice this, you will notice a shift. Things that used to disturb you won't affect you the same way anymore. People who used to control your emotions will lose that control. Situations that once felt overwhelming will start to feel manageable. Because now you are not just reacting to life, you are responding to it with awareness. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember this simple truth. They can control their words, they can control their actions, but they cannot control you unless you allow them to. And the moment you take charge of your reactions, you take back your power. Let me share something that many people misunderstand, something that can protect your peace, your energy, and your self-respect. Set clear boundaries. Because the truth is, toxic people don't just appear in our lives and start hurting us randomly. Most of the time, they cross limits slowly, step by step, and we allow it. Not intentionally but silently. The first time someone disrespects you, you ignore it. You think, maybe they didn't mean it. The second time, you feel uncomfortable, but you still stay quiet. The third time, it starts hurting, but by then, a pattern is already created. And that's how boundaries get broken, not in one big moment, but in many small moments where you chose silence over self-respect. You see, boundaries are like invisible lines that define what is acceptable and what is not. They tell people how to treat you without you having to explain it again and again. But if those lines are unclear, or worse, if they don't exist, people will keep crossing them. Not always because they are bad, but because you never showed them where to stop. Imagine your life as a house. Boundaries are the doors and walls of that house. Without them, anyone can walk in any time, say anything, do anything, and leave you feeling disturbed. But when you have strong boundaries, it doesn't mean you lock everyone out. It simply means people enter with respect. And this is where many people get confused. They think setting boundaries means being rude, aggressive, or selfish. They feel guilty for saying no. They worry, what if people don't like me anymore? But understand this clearly. Setting boundaries is not about pushing people away. It's about protecting your space. You can be kind and still have boundaries. You can be respectful and still say no. You can be loving and still choose yourself. Because boundaries are not a sign of ego, they are a sign of self-respect. Toxic people often test your boundaries. They may interrupt you, dismiss your feelings, make hurtful comments, or expect you to always adjust. And if you keep adjusting without speaking up, they assume it's okay. Not because it is okay, but because you didn't say otherwise. And slowly you start feeling drained, frustrated, disrespected. Not because they changed, but because you never defined your limits. But the moment you start setting boundaries, everything begins to shift. It might feel uncomfortable at first. Your voice may shake, your heart may race. You may feel guilty for saying something simple like, I'm not okay with that, or I need some space. But that discomfort is growth. Because for the first time, you are choosing yourself. Let me tell you something important. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries will not like your boundaries. They might call you different. They might say you've changed. They might even try to make you feel guilty. But remember, you didn't change. You just stopped allowing what was hurting you. And that makes them uncomfortable. But that's okay. Because your responsibility is not to keep everyone comfortable, your responsibility is to keep yourself respected. Setting boundaries doesn't always mean having big confrontations. Sometimes it's in the small actions. It's in not answering every call immediately. It's in not explaining yourself for every decision. It's in walking away from conversations that drain you. It's in choosing silence instead of engaging in negativity. And sometimes it's in clearly saying, "This is not acceptable to me," without anger, without aggression, just clarity. Because when your words are calm but firm, they carry more power. Boundaries are not about controlling others. You can't control how people behave, but you can control what you accept. And that changes everything. Because when you stop accepting disrespect, you stop experiencing it the same way. Either people adjust their behavior or they lose access to you, and both outcomes are good for your peace. Also understand, boundaries are not just for others, they are for yourself too. It's about how much negativity you allow into your mind. It's about how much time you give to draining people. It's about how often you ignore your own needs just to please others. Because sometimes the person who crosses your boundaries the most is you. You say yes when you want to say no. You stay when you want to leave. You tolerate when you want to speak. So setting boundaries is not just an external act, it is an internal decision. A decision that says, "I matter too." And when you truly believe that, your actions start reflecting it. You don't over-explain. You don't over-apologize. You don't over-sacrifice. You simply stand in your truth. And the beautiful thing is, when you set clear boundaries, you don't just protect yourself from toxic people, you also create space for healthy relationships. Because the right people will respect your boundaries. They won't see them as rejection, they will see them as clarity. So don't be afraid to draw the line. Because at the end of the day, respect doesn't come from how much you tolerate. It comes from how clearly you define what you will not tolerate. Let me share something that feels simple, but carries deep power when you truly practice it. Speak less, observe more. Because in a world where everyone is trying to be heard, very few people are actually trying to understand. And sometimes the more you speak, the more you lose your energy, your clarity, and even your value in certain situations. Think about it. When you are surrounded by toxic people, what usually happens? You try to explain yourself. You try to justify your actions. You try to make them understand your intentions. You talk and talk and talk, hoping that at some point they will finally see your perspective. But do they? Most of the time they don't. Because toxic people are not listening to understand you. They are listening to respond, to argue, or to twist your words. And the more you speak, the more material you give them to use against you. That's why sometimes silence is not weakness, it is wisdom. Speaking less doesn't mean you stop expressing yourself completely. It means you choose your words carefully. It means you stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand you. Because not every person deserves access to your thoughts, your feelings, and your energy. Imagine you are holding a cup of water. Every time you speak unnecessarily, explain too much, or argue with the wrong people, it's like pouring a little water out. Slowly your cup becomes empty, and then you feel drained, not because life is too hard, but because you are giving too much of yourself in the wrong places. Now imagine doing the opposite. You listen more, you observe more, you speak only when it truly adds value. Suddenly, your energy stays with you. And something interesting happens. You start seeing things you never noticed before. When you observe more, you begin to understand people better. You notice their patterns. You see who respects you and who doesn't. You recognize who is genuine and who is pretending. Because when you are always talking, you miss the signals. But when you are quiet, you become aware. Toxic people often reveal themselves through their actions, not just their words. They interrupt, they dismiss, they manipulate, they contradict themselves. But if you are too busy defending yourself, you won't notice these patterns. Observation gives you clarity, and clarity gives you power. Because now, instead of reacting blindly, you respond wisely. You choose your battles. You decide where to invest your time and where to withdraw. Also understand this, when you speak less, your words carry more weight. If someone talks all the time, people start ignoring them. But when someone speaks only when necessary, people listen. Why? Because there is intention behind their words. It's like a quiet room. Even the smallest sound becomes noticeable. In the same way, when you reduce unnecessary talking, your voice becomes more impactful. And this is especially important around toxic people. They often try to pull you into arguments, into drama, into unnecessary conversations. They want you to react, to engage, to defend, because the moment you do, they gain control of the situation. But when you stay calm, when you don't respond immediately, when you simply observe, it disrupts their pattern. They don't know how to handle someone who doesn't react the way they expect. And that is your strength. Speaking less also protects you from saying things you might regret later. When emotions are high, words can become sharp, and once spoken, they cannot be taken back. But when you pause, when you allow silence to exist, you give yourself time to think. You give yourself space to choose your words with awareness. And often, you realize that the situation didn't even require a response. Not every comment needs an answer. Not every opinion needs a debate. Not every misunderstanding needs clarification. Sometimes letting things pass is the best choice. Now, this doesn't mean you should never speak up. There are moments when your voice is necessary, when your boundaries need to be expressed, when your truth needs to be heard. But even in those moments, speaking less helps. Because instead of long explanations, you communicate clearly and directly. No over-justifying, no over-explaining, just simple, firm, and calm words. That kind of communication is powerful. Because it shows confidence, people who constantly explain themselves often appear unsure, but people who speak with clarity and brevity appear grounded. And that changes how others perceive you. Also, when you observe more, you don't just understand others better, you understand yourself better. You notice your triggers. You become aware of your reactions. You start recognizing what affects your peace and what doesn't. And that awareness is the foundation of growth. Because how can you change something if you don't first notice it? So instead of rushing to speak, take a moment to listen. Listen not just to words, but to tone, behavior, and intention. Observe not just what people say, but how they act when it matters. And most importantly, observe yourself. Because the more you understand, the less you feel the need to prove. And the less you feel the need to prove, the more peaceful you become. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where you feel the urge to explain, argue, or defend, pause. Ask yourself, is this conversation worth my energy? Is this person truly trying to understand me? And if the answer is no, choose silence. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you value your peace more than unnecessary noise. Because at the end of the day, you don't always need a louder voice. Sometimes you just need a quieter mind.